A somewhat underwhelming race in Abu Dhabi with very little to talk about following a procession of drivers. I've done my best to pull together a 7 things we learned from the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, but quite frankly, I'm thankful that I didn't fall asleep. My name's Andy, and this is Behind the Drive. Number 1. Max Verstappen out for a Sunday drive. After putting in an impressive qualifying lap on Saturday afternoon to take pole position, Verstappen kept the lead at the beginning of the race and on the safety car restart to build a comfortable lead in the race. Leading every lap, managing his tyres well, and even telling the pit wall that they could turn the engine down on lap 49 with 6 laps to go, represented the Dutch driver's dominance this weekend. Unfortunately for Verstappen, he missed out on the fastest lap right at the end, meaning he failed to complete his first ever Grand Slam. Ricciardo ended up taking the fastest lap achievement away from Max, but more on him later. To be honest, it was pretty much it in terms of the things to mention for Max. The job was really done on Saturday, as the Yas Marina circuit does not lend itself to great Formula 1 racing. It was a great race for Max and a great achievement for the Red Bull driver to get the same number of race wins this season as Valtteri Bottas. It's also worth mentioning that Max stayed in the hunt for second in the Drivers' Championship right up to the final race, despite retiring on 5 occasions this season, so a pretty impressive result. Number 2. McLaren takes third. Perhaps the most exciting element of the Abu Dhabi race was the battle between Racing Point and McLaren for third in the Constructors. Going into this weekend, McLaren were 10 points behind Racing Point after the Pink Panthers had a stellar performance last time out at the Sakhir Grand Prix with a double podium finish. So the pressure was on for the ever-consistent McLaren drivers in Abu Dhabi as they needed to outscore the Racing Point team this weekend. Luck was on their side though, as PEREZ would start from the back of the grid with a penalty for taking a 4th engine during this season. Both McLaren drivers qualified well in 4th and 6th, meaning they were in the prime position with Stroll behind them in 8th position on the grid. Early on in the race, the McLarens did well to hold position with Lando in 4th and Carlos behind in 6th, with Alex Albon in between them. Albon, sure enough, got past Norris in the end, but from there it was pretty much plain sailing for the Papaya cars as they double stacked in the pits for the hard tyres on lap 11, much like the rest of the field, and then continued to stay in a net 5th, 6th for the rest of the Grand Prix. There was a small controversy though, as the Racing Point team felt that Sainz went too slow through the pits, impeding Lance Stroll behind him to ensure that the double stack pit stop would work for McLaren. The stewards opened up an investigation into the incident during the race, but chose to investigate it further after, once they had access to telemetry data from the car. For me, this is downright ridiculous. The FIA and the stewards have access to every single camera angle available and GPS data on the cars to see how fast they've been going. They have this real-time data to police any speeding in the pit lane and any speeding under a virtual safety car, so why would they not check to see the speeds that Carlos was doing during the pit stop? It was hardly like anything else was going on to keep them busy. Either way, barring a disqualification for the Spanish driver, any penalty the FIA give is unlikely to change the overall result, as McLaren finished 7 points ahead of the Racing Point team behind them, with the team taking that coveted best of the rest position in the championship. It was an incredible result for the team, with their best championship finish since 2012, with the team managing to continue their recovery from the lows of the 2017 season, where the team ended up 9th in the Constructors' Championship. The result came from the consistency of both drivers delivering week in, week out. A bit of luck as they benefited from the 15-point deduction for the Racing Point team in the Constructors' Championship, and having a car that would deliver at different types of circuit. I'm incredibly excited to see what the team will be able to do with a Mercedes power unit for next year, and whether they can continue to deliver the results for 2021 and beyond. Number 3. Dreadful Ferrari strategy. So, after talking about a team massively on the up in McLaren, we can now look at a team that's gone the other way in Ferrari. Today was the final race for Seb Vettel after a dismal season for the German driver. Vettel started the race on the hard tyres and was kept out for a long time as he battled for one last time in the Ferrari, keeping Gasly, Stroll, Ocon and Kvyat behind him. For me, this was Vettel's way of having one last hurrah in the Ferrari before he moves to Aston Martin for next year. But the dreadful strategy call was for his teammate, Charles Leclerc. After starting on the medium tyre after reaching Q3 on Saturday, Charles opted not to pit for hard tyres despite the mechanics being out in the pit lane waiting for him with those exact tyres. He was the only driver on the medium tyres who opted to stay out after being stuck behind his teammate before the safety car, but the lack of the pit stop implies that Charles had a say in whether he would pit or not, as once again the Ferrari team looked lost when it comes to race strategy. It was obviously a no-brainer to pit the Monegasque driver, and if it was the young driver's decision to not pit, then it implies that the decisions of the team in the past has had an impact on his trust in the team's ability to make the right call at the right time. Or maybe Charles just wanted to fight the cars up at the front for the last race of the season. Either way, it was a mistake that ended up with Charles falling to the back of the pack, and in the end never really looked like he could fight for the points after his stop. I think the strategy call summarises Ferrari's season well. Absolutely one to forget and move on from. Let's see what the new engine looks like for 2021. Number 4. Daniel Ricciardo, a counter strategy. Ricciardo ended his 2-year chapter with Renault with an impressive 7th place finish and a fastest lap to top it all off. This came as a result of the Australian driver going long on the hard tyres for 40 laps, an impressive run in a full-weight car. As a result of Vettel's strategy of holding up some cars behind him, it created a gap for Ricciardo to then pit late in the race and lose just 2 positions to the McLaren cars behind him, finishing the race in 7th with the fastest lap. It was nice to see at least one driver making something different work after Ricciardo went from 12th to 7th in the race. I'm sure he'll be pleased with his final Renault outing as he moves to McLaren for 2021. Number 5. The tyre bravado happens once again. Once again, as has been the theme this year, the drivers were all doubtful of whether the hard tyres would hold on with the expected 44-lap stint after pitting under the virtual safety car on lap 11. Given the limited Friday running and the lack of long runs, it was looking moderately exciting after 20 laps or so when it wasn't clear whether the strategy would work. But very soon after, and once Ricciardo had proven he could manage the tyres for 40 laps on heavy fuel, it became quite clear that it was going to be possible and the race was near enough over. If the cars were able to get closer, or if the track was better designed for overtaking, it could have been a good race strategy-wise, as someone near the front could have taken a risk and gone for a late pit stop to be on fresh tyres until the end. But given there were just 1 or 2 realistic opportunities to overtake through the lap, it was not really feasible for any of the teams to try something different. Number 6. Sergio Perez, the end of a chapter. The end of Sergio Perez's 7-year stint at the Racing Point team was a disappointing one, as he started from the back of the grid after taking engine penalties and later retired on lap 10 with a transmission problem. It was a real shame for the driver who's in his 10th season in Formula 1, as it could well be his final race in the sport if he's not taking up for a drive in the next couple of years. Personally, I hope this isn't the last we see of Checo on the Formula 1 grid, as he's had an impressive career getting the absolute maximum out of his car, while also protecting the tyres. Hope is not over yet for Perez's position on the grid next year, as he could potentially take Alex Albon's seat at Red Bull, but only time will tell on this one. Number 7. Well done Formula 1. A bit of a cop-out 7th point on this list after a fairly uneventful final race, closing out the 2020 Formula 1 season. And what a season it's been, with new and returning tracks, an unbelievably close midfield pack and some incredible action across the 17-race year. It's been impressive for Formula 1 to achieve this in a year that many people thought that there would be no racing, but the management delivered on a robust strategy, with Martin Brundle mentioning that there have been 76,000 COVID tests carried out across the shortened year. An impressive result, but it will be great to see the F1 circus go back to the global calendar again for next season. So there you have it, an uneventful race and a fairly uneventful 7 things we learned, but what do you think? Is there anything that I missed? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more post-season F1 content coming soon.